Good evening. My name is Shay Chalmers, and I'm a mechanical engineer and leader in the manufacturing and engineering industry. I work with people from industry, government, and education to harness ideas and create opportunities for Australia's manufacturing industry. Firstly, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we are gathered here today, the Turrbal and Yagara people. Although we are meeting virtually, it's important to acknowledge Australia's first scientists, engineers, and manufacturers and pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. This event is all about celebrating National Science Week and the amazing technologists who make a significant contribution to improving how we live, work, and play. Particularly now, with so many of our brilliant minds working around the clock to develop novel ways of designing and manufacturing solutions to our current COVID challenges. If you are logging in from Queensland or anywhere else around our nation, welcome to Factory of the Future. We look forward to your virtual presence tonight. Be prepared to hear 3 innovation leaders blow your mind, predicting the future of manufacturing and where the human worker fits into these future pipelines. National Science Week, in partnership with Inspiring Australia and the Queensland Museum, will run from the 15th to the 23rd of August and is available online at the National Science Week website or directly through inspiringqueensland.com.au. I'd like to begin by introducing our esteemed panel members. We are incredibly lucky tonight to have these awesome future manufacturing champions with us. From my left, we have Leanne Kemp, Queensland's Chief Entrepreneur and Blockchain Extraordinaire. This amazing woman is everywhere when it comes to technology and is a lady of many hats, literally and figuratively. When she's not driving entrepreneurship across our state, she's running her global technology company Everledger and driving the direction in blockchain and advanced manufacturing through her roles at the World Economic Forum. In the middle, we have Stefan Hajkovic. As the principal scientist and leader of CSIRO Futures, Stefan spends his time thinking about how people make decisions and plan for an uncertain future. One thing is for certain, the future is coming, and with it comes a change of magnificent proportion. Stefan is the guy who plans to identify those changes and how we might cope with it in the new world. And then in the middle here we have Dr. Corey Stewart, CEO of the ARM Hub, the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Hub in Brisbane. Corey is nothing short of amazing. Through her work, she has leveraged Queensland's global leadership in advanced robotics and design-led manufacturing to create a new not-for-profit company with a mission to accelerate the uptake of advanced manufacturing across Australia. What a pack of legends. Welcome to all our panelists, and thank you so much for making the time to be here tonight. To put it simply, manufacturing is the act of making stuff. In today's world, manufacturing is also where new technologies like artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, big data, and material and molecular engineering makes the biggest impact on humans and their societies in terms of the everyday. It is where the ingenuity, digital advances, and tomorrowland thinking meets our everyday needs, from transport, health, and communication to what people eat, wear, watch, and experience. Together, these elements describe the factories of the future. Now, I've rambled off a few super nerdy words, so perhaps we should start by defining some of these out there technologies that are already in the here and now, and how they're set to define the future factory floor. Stefan, can you give us a bit of a brief overview about AI, IoT, and even molecular mimicry, if you so desire.
The first two, not sure about the last one, but so artificial intelligence, the way we've described it in the national roadmap that was launched last year, is a collection of interrelated technologies used to perform tasks autonomously with slightly less human involvement, or the machine making increased judgments on its own to perform tasks which were previously within the human domain specifically. So without explicit guidance from a human being. That's what makes it powerful. That's what's getting everyone out of bed on AI, is machine learning, the ability of the machine to problem solve on its own. It can handle more complex tasks. So it is redefining how we do manufacturing. Automation is coming in, and it's a really powerful and significant technology. The second one, what was
IoT.
that? IoT is a catch-all term for anything connected to the internet, anything with data and device connectivity. So you probably can't call your toaster IoT unless it's a smart toaster, which is transferring data to and from the internet. But any device that shares data across the internet and exchanges that data with other devices and does something with the data is part of the IoT, the Internet of Things. And it has a lot of power. It also has a lot of vulnerability because of cyber attack. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent.
The last one, no. You have to do it. Or someone else can do the last one.
Corey, can you tell us about robotics and the latest in digital transformation around using big data?
Yeah, so well, robots have been in existence and being used for over 50 years in manufacturing, and we're probably most familiar with them in the car manufacturing space. Is probably the image that comes to people's mind. Really capable of doing things repetitively for mass manufacture very, very well. What's new and really significant about robotics in manufacturing is kind of what Stefan has said. We can now augment them with all of these other capabilities to make them make their own decisions, make smart decisions, but perhaps most importantly for manufacturing, really attend to kind of the need for personalisation or mass customisation. So if you want the next one to be pink, you need the next one to have a handle. This one, you don't know the size and you need to go and find out. A robot can now, with these smart tools and technologies, make some of those decisions for you, so it becomes cost competitive and something really that we can deliver into the market. Yeah.
Awesome. So, well, biomimicry, I can give you an example of that, is one of the cool ones that sticks in my mind is Velcro. So Velcro is a really good example of biomimicry. You know those really annoying weeds that catch on your clothes? Well, they've got a little hook on them, and that's how Velcro came about. And molecular mimicry, I'd say, is a molecular level of that, but I'm no expert in that, so I can't take that one. Leanne, I know that blockchain is one of your favourite dinner time topics. Tell us a bit about blockchain, what it is, and how it fits squarely in the middle of the future of manufacturing.
Well, blockchain is something that's been coined as something new, but the reality is it's certainly not. It's a combination of existing technologies that was brought together in around 2008. It's a database technology. So instead of storing something centrally, it's distributed. It then requires consensus. Many participants on the network or on the chain effectively vote to agree or vote to disagree that the data being stored is truth to the moment in time. And then there's a secondary sort of layer that sits within it as well called smart contracts. So the ability, which is neither smart, by the way, and nor is it a contract by virtue of the law, but what it does do is provides for automated rule sets to enable a network of participants where not one person is in control, but everyone is in control. So this technology is being used now to prove supply chain traceability. It's being used to transfer digital money across the world. And the technology now is starting to really live up to its promise with many, many different companies and countries adopting it for everything from as important as the health pass related to COVID, right the way down to the work that we do in tracing diamonds.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanne. So now that we understand the fundamentals, I might just change tact a bit. Pivoting seems to be the newest buzzword in manufacturing, and especially with COVID-19. But a lot of people don't realise that Australian manufacturers are some of the most agile in the world. We live in one of the most volatile manufacturing industries in the world. Our industry here in Australia fluctuates more than twice that in the US, and pivoting is something that our industry does continually just to survive. but it's certainly been brought to the forefront during the COVID response. I'd love to hear any examples that the panel have about how pivoting is making its mark and poses a model for future factories. Did anybody want to take that one? You want to go, Corey?
Sure. I mean, we've had, at the Arm Hub, I've had experiences helping companies, I guess, adopt new technologies that will respond to COVID things, so PPE masks and gloves and ventilators, for example. But what we're doing in that process, we're upskilling a workforce. We're, building the workforce of the future. Now, the skills that they have and they're able to adopt through this period, it's a great investment because they're going to be the next workforce that can take those skills into another manufacturing challenge and another opportunity that the market provides. So I think it's been very fortunate really that pivoting is now given this profile, as manufacturing is given this profile, because it's a way that we can really invest and upskill a workforce.
So the World Economic Forum refers to this as a great reset, right? So the pivoting is occurring because demand side shifts are going to be huge and they're happening really quickly. A lot of supply chains have been completely broken and risk bankruptcy for a lot of companies as they can't get the stuff they need from other countries. So the part of the pivot is pivoting to whom you're selling. And I think there is the possibility of nearshoring, localised supply chains with a lot of benefit to local manufacturers. Yet to see how that play out. But who people buy stuff off is about to change a whole lot around the world. The other aspect of pivoting is what's possible with technology today is, yes, manufacturers have been able to make ventilators and PPE and all sorts of things from manufacturing quite other stuff. We used to build factories to make cars or a thing. The factory of the future is increasingly making anything from raw materials with additive manufacturing, advanced materials, 3D printing, and a lot of well-known technologies there. So that increases the capacity to pivot to something new. So yeah, the COVID-19 period is demand-driven pivoting, but then technology is leading to supply-side pivots as well.
Yep, that's a very good point. Leanne, did you have any comments on that?
Yeah, look, I would have to say one of the most sort of glaring outcomes for me at the time of any company pivoting is responsible innovation. We can certainly spin up 3D printers and take new forms of material science and, manufacture or make anything. But we also need to be sure that it sits at the backdrop of ensuring that there's responsible innovation at the forefront of innovation. And we didn't necessarily see that at a time when there was just such a dramatic need to ensure that we were able to produce and print, PPE effectively.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. So it's demand driven. We've responded to the demand, not necessarily in a responsibly innovative way, but what does that mean for us as we look forward? We've built this foundation, we've built this capability, or we're leveraging our manufacturing capability that we have. But Stefan, what do you see for our manufacturing as we move forward?
Big supply chain shifts, big shifts in who's demanding stuff that we make and where that's sold. The nearshoring phenomenon, I think, has got some real legs in that as supply chains are rebuilt post-COVID, companies want resilience. They faced huge risks as supply chains were shut down. In the early parts of COVID, that was probably the biggest risk to Australian industry was not being shut down itself, but being unable to source critical products from offshore. So I think that gets reset. There's no end of world trade though. There's no shutting off imports option for Australian manufacturing. That just is not feasible for at least a long time to come, but there are likely to be quite sudden and dramatic shifts in how this works. And I think that's what opens up effectively a lot of opportunities for the manufacturing sector, is reading that early and then starting to supply into these new markets for manufactured goods.
Yep.
Then
Absolutely.
Embracing technology, a lot of where we get to, companies that have come to us and I'm aware of that CSIRO is working with, the thing they need to clear to be able to sell parts offshore, a medical device manufacturing company, they basically scan part of the body where you need an implant or something put in there, they'll 3D print it and then it can be used in surgery and implanted in your body. The critical problem to solve is computer vision, machine learning that can really accurately from a distance, so people in India, for example, can, without travelling to Australia, can do this remotely, can order the part and get there. The hurdle for that company, that manufacturing company to clear is computer vision and machine learning.
Absolutely. So made in Australia and the flying kangaroo, while we're on this topic, Corey, how do you think we can build an agile and advanced manufacturing future for Australia? Where do you see the biggest moves happening?
Yeah, well, I think Australia really needs to make a decision how we do innovation and how we add value. And I guess the debate is out about whether we're picking and choosing industries or where that focus is going to be. And we had a little bit of a preliminary chat about this. Certainly, I think there's a reason that Australia should be looking at what we're really good at. And I'm sure we can deepen the conversation about comparative versus competitive advantage. But I think we do have some competitive areas, like we should be making decisions about being very good at ag tech. We are quite good globally at med tech. Well, we should be transforming our mining and mets into something that's globally competitive on a larger scale. These are some of the areas I think we need to focus on. I think there's a lot of focus around our institutions leading this in the policy environment, but we know that that's a slow process and it's somewhat unpredictable. So I think it's up to us really to be leaders and to find the leaders and take the action.
So we're talking about picking winners here. We're talking about being strategic in
Yes.
what we manufacture, what we look to innovate. We're a country of 25 million or so now.
Yeah.
It's not a big country in the greater scheme of things. Leanne, what are your thoughts on picking strategic winners in the manufacturing space?
Look, I think government has a role to play here in a pretty substantial way. When we think about the size of multinationals, the tyranny of distance with Australia, we probably have a great opportunity to pass policy in such a way where we would have the right to repair, as a prime example. We already have free trade agreements in existence, more newly signed with the UK, which is a huge market when we think about the opportunity that exists there for Australia and the UK together. And imagine if we could get to Rolls-Royce and say, give us the right to repair. Then you're starting to talk about having the ability to locally invoke manufacturing. And even if it's an assembly manufacturing part of the market, that still gives us a leg up in an area that we've not necessarily been able to capture before today. We're not seeing that progress fast enough, to be honest. And I think that there's got to be a way to muscle in on that. So government policy has a huge role to play right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Singapore built a shipping port before Asia knew it needed one, and it turned out it did, and that was really crucial to its development pathway. Then it built an airport. Now it's investing big time in fintech, and it's going to put itself in the middle of the global financial hub of Asia. Pittsburgh and steel we were talking about, there was a clear specialisation in metallurgical science and now more general ICT capability. Some Swedish researchers had a look at this and they came up with the concept of path dependency, where you do specialise. If you build off an existing industry like the METS industry, the mining, engineering, technology, services of mining, worked really well. It's puzzling to some where we haven't gone further with agri-tech. We have the capabilities. We're not seeing the levels of investment and activity that is perhaps occurring in other countries yet. But there is a bit of a rule around building off what you're good at when you develop the next technology industry that goes off the top of that. So picking winners is important, but I think then there is an element of serendipity in how this occurs too. The Cambridge cluster from the University of Cambridge proves this to us a little. And there was a lot of investment in Cambridge, but not in anything in particular. And then highly serendipitously, all these tech firms started to grow around the University of Cambridge. Some of them became highly successful, like DeepMind, which was bought by Google and is probably one of the world's best machine learning and artificial intelligence companies today. But that was a sort of totally organic growth of capability, and the people who've written about it said government didn't really help it happen. In fact, they were getting in the way for a lot of what occurred in that tech centre. So there's a lot of sort of different models that do work. Overall, I mean, I do believe picking winners is important. It was the approach we took in the artificial intelligence strategy. We identified clear areas of comparative advantage for Australia, but at the same time creating that serendipitous environment where things are right for new companies to form and grow is important.
Yeah, I think that feeds in really nicely to the collaboration piece. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I know all of you are too. But have you seen any good examples, both here and abroad, of where we can build that collaborative ecosystem to deliver that, to pick those winners?
I know that in Europe in particular, there's lots of collaborative companies similar to ours, like orchestrating companies that are about bringing different disciplines, different people, different capabilities, both formal like contracts, but also doing the business behind making collaboration happen. They have a lot more in Europe that exists in the way that we are probably a little bit unique in Australia. But they do it a lot in the circular economy, which I've been reading extensively about because that's what they're publishing and writing about, and they do it very well. So I think we've got lots to learn from those kinds of companies that are existing elsewhere.
You worked in the steel. In the steel sector in the United States. Now, I found that interesting. We were talking before because I only know the sort of data and journal papers I've read on it, but steel products out of Pittsburgh fell to almost nothing. Steel know-how, though, goes up really quickly, and then they built research institutes around that that developed expertise in metallurgical science, which has led to probably one of the most successful innovation and tech hubs in the world, with very low unemployment, diversified economy, and is a bit of a model we look at. But you've lived through the transition. It wasn't easy, was it? I mean,
Well, I think they had to go to the point of almost failure, right?
Yeah.
Where unemployment was through the roof, where people lost their homes, where there were no jobs. And then really that region, all they had was the mindset and the knowledge around metallurgy and material sciences, and they used that to leverage and then pivot. I think they focused a lot on med tech and focused a lot on technology in general, but it's not an easy path.
so that crisis that was being felt in the GFC wasn't happening here because iron ore was still $200 a tonne and coal prices were strong, and then I've probably accounted for over 50% of our exports. And the Australian economy was working really smoothly through the GFC, so the imperative to innovate wasn't really felt.
Is this the crisis that we need to innovate?
But is this the one? You know, we now tragically have 1 million unemployed persons in Australia. We have an absolute crisis. And we haven't experienced it in our lives before, and now is the time. We've really got to start to think of what next. Fast.
Absolutely. Leanne, what do you think about the opportunities moving forward? Where are we at right now and where can we go? Oh, you're muted.
You're on mute, Leanne, I think.
I think we've lost Leanne. I think you're muted, Leanne, for a second. We'll see if we can unmute you. No. We still can't hear you, buddy. Corey, did you have something to say on that?
I've lost the. I'm keenly watching Leanne. I've lost the train of thought there.
Well, while we get back Leanne's audio in a second, I might just turn the focus around to the people involved in the factories of the future. Because after all, people are at the centre of everything that we do. And I think we've talked a lot about the technology, but we can't lose focus on that human element. Can you discuss, I'd like to discuss the idea that robots can actually help people do their jobs better. And what are the skills that we humans have to master to manage the robots and work side by side with them? Corey, did you want to start that one?
That's very keenly the space that we're working in day to day. You know, robots, I think even when the unions are starting to say robots are creating the jobs of the future, I think we need to be alert that robots are part of this future capability of having a successful manufacturing industry locally. But in terms of practical, on the ground, day to day, companies adopting robotics are finding that really they're a tool. They're just another tool. We've been building new tools for ourselves to work with, you know, from hammers to CNC machines right now into robots and what have you. So people are finding that, you know, they're helping them do their jobs. They're making their jobs more satisfying, you know, taking the dull, the dirty, the dangerous out of their work, and, you know, enabling them to spend their time doing more, you know, high value tasks related to the opportunity. So the creative thinking, putting the opportunity together, shaping the work that needs to happen. Like, humans are still, you know, telling robots what to do, how to do it, when to do it. So I think if we think about them as tools, we're having a whole nother conversation that's sort of bypassing this kind of fear of automation and robotics into many facilities. And what's happening in parallel to that, robots, along with other assistive kind of technologies, are providing new novel capabilities. Suddenly companies are able to do things that they couldn't do before, provide services or products that they once would never even have imagined of doing, and they can do it more competitively. So this is a great celebration opportunity. Certainly some of the companies we work with, for every piece of robotic equipment they implement, they're employing 6 to 8 new staff. It's really providing a whole new lease on their operations. So this is the story of robots actually helping people do their jobs, make them more satisfying. It's very rewarding when you're going into a company when you've got usually an expert team who've been working there for some time, and the next employee is saying, look, where's my robot? You know, I've got this problem. You know, I'm doing something tedious. Why do I have to do this? You know, I don't want to paint this anymore. I don't want to polish this tediously. I don't want to be in a dangerous environment with these fibres, except where's my robot? So I think hands-on is often the best way to make this change rather than just talking mysteriously about how robots are going to come into our factories and change the way and everything that we have to do.
Stefan, did you have a comment?
Absolutely. I mean, you've said it perfectly. The dirty, dull, dangerous, the stuff we don't want to do and we aren't good at, robots can do very well. This is an amazing time in history where we get the chance to take a lot of work away from us that we don't want to do. Did it really negatively impact the labour market? Certainly there are cases where this is occurring, but I remember when we started looking at the future of work and digital, and this was sort of, there was fear about robots taking jobs and mass unemployment. University of Oxford study found 47% of jobs were going to get done by a robot or a computer.
And they corrected that.
They completely corrected it. So that was looked at again and again, and now I think the estimates are well south of 10%. And it hasn't worked out. And then the robots, as you've said, have created a lot of additional jobs, and artificial intelligence more broadly. You know, there are impacts, and we shouldn't gloss over them in the financial sector. I know as automated transactional systems have come on board, people certainly have lost their jobs, but a lot of it is early transition, reskilling. Overall, I think, you know, robotics and AI, machine learning works in a similar way to other technologies in the past. It's a net job creator. It increases salaries. It increases labour productivity. With a robot on my side, I can get a lot more done in an hour, and I can be a lot more valuable to an employer if I've worked out how to work well with the robot. So, you know, that's the other thing is there's a lot that robots will not do for another 30 years that we thought they could do. So, you know, even things that baristas in early analyses of ours, we would have thought would have gone extinct because they are highly automatable until you stop and think about the full job of a barista.
We like people making our coffee.
Exactly. I mean, at the airport, the barista queue is really long and the automated machine queue is really short. Yep. And that's when you start to understand the role of a barista and what they're doing. And technology can automate them, but in actual fact, there's a lot more to it. And I think that's more how things have worked out. I'm confident 2030, 2040 still sees baristas. Yeah. You know, once COVID is finished and we've figured out, you know, how to still go back into a coffee shop.
Yes. Leanne, do we have you back online? I can't hear you. That never happens.
Well, I think the important point to pick up there, it's about speed, isn't it? About how quickly we're adopting, how fast we're able to upskill the workforce that still have their jobs, transition those companies into being successful rather than falling into the slump of, you know, not competing, not being competitive.
We're going fast enough?
We're not. We're absolutely on no metric going fast enough. And this is where the anxiety actually is. And I think that's the misnomer, I suppose, of a talk about the future of factories and are we going too fast in digital technology. So the future of the factory, oh my God, do we have our robots yet? Or, you know, or do we have our technology in place? And Australia really doesn't. We have not invested and we're not going fast enough.
Yeah, I think given the size of the benefits, you're absolutely right. In vehicle automation, for example, massive safety benefits are starting to be demonstrated. So we know that front to rear forward warning collision systems with autonomous emergency braking has been shown on US highway studies to reduce front to rear collisions with injuries by 56%. The best performing pedestrian avoidance and cyclist avoidance systems are up at 87% mortality reduction. You know, when you look at the extent of what's possible in vehicle automation, this is a massive step up in safety, but it's hardly at all really anywhere near where it could be and should be, I think. And that's just a microcosm of what's possible, but we're not actually getting there yet.
Some of the challenges associated with this digital transformation are to do with that human element, though, and our inherent resistance to change. And I think COVID has demonstrated that we are actually quite resilient when it comes to digital transformation and has ripped the Band-Aid off in a lot of ways. So I might just try you, Leanne, to see if I can get some voice out of you. But what have you seen with the digital transformation through COVID, and how can we leverage that moving forward? No, still can't hear you. Sorry, Leanne. So, technology has failed us.
I always like it when you're in technology events where the technology fails.
So what do you guys think about the...
I was just about to say how marvellous teleworking's been. But,
I think it's a really good opportunity for us, particularly in manufacturing.
I think you said it we've torn the Band-Aid off. That was a nice way of putting it. And that's kind of, we've done 10 years of digital transformation in the space of a few months. And that's happened, telehealth, telework, online retail, All sorts of online activities have just exploded in COVID out of necessity. And I think what's gone into the virtual world is not actually coming all back again into the physical world. I think a lot
There's
of it
obvious
stays
things
virtual.
we can do quite well virtually. There's a lot of things we can't do as well or as efficiently, and I think perhaps innovation is often one of those where it takes dynamic environments in which to collaborate and make change and do business together. I think sometimes that's all quite difficult, but I'm sure that's happening at some register well, and maybe that's the next pandemic or crisis we'll have to,
Yeah, well, they say
come over that
never waste a good crisis,
That's
and figure
right.
out what's, in Ciro, credit card expenditure is just bottomed, right? And then you would ask the next question pretty quickly, well, did we need it? So I think, it does show you something about what's possible.
On that topic of never wasting a good pandemic, we've had pandemics before in the past.
and we'll have them again.
And we will have them
will.
again. So what can we learn from the past? We were just chatting earlier about looking backwards. What happened after the Spanish flu, and what can we learn from that as we move forward?
I think this is very interesting. We're having this as kind of a bit canned because we kind of talked about it, but in 1918-19 was the Spanish flu. Awful for the world. 50 million people died, so worse than COVID-19. Which was followed by the 1920-21 global depression, similar to where we're at. And most of the economic forecast that I look at is negative 4.9% GDP growth this calendar year, resuming to 5% positive next calendar year with a fair bit of uncertainty about it. But roughly 2 years of hardship are ahead of us. In 1922, though, to 1929, and you might remember the film The Great Gatsby, which is at the end, a great film, and at the end of the Roaring Twenties, that captures the ridiculous wealth creation which led to speculation on Wall Street, as they were just making so much money off the Dow Jones just spiraling during that time that it had to kind of crash, which led to the 30s depression. But 1922 to 29 were rates of economic growth roughly double long-term averages. Wealth creation, unprecedented. Why did it happen? A lot was in the manufacturing sector, innovation in manufacturing, but fueled by the general purpose technology of electricity. Did not matter what you were making or really what job you had, electricity was all of a sudden very useful. So like we have robots today and AI, I would argue, and digital as a general purpose tech that we're all using in our jobs. And it increases your productivity. It makes you do more with less and do your job better. This is our general purpose technology, and if history teaches us anything, it teaches us that the escape from this awful crisis we're having, unemployment crisis, is technology-led. Technology can grow productivity like it did in the 20s, create wealth, and we can have the roaring 2020s like we did in the roaring 1920s. I think that's very feasible. So there is a sort of 2 years of hardship, but be smart, and there's a way out of this to somewhere way better.
Australia's part of that upswing. I wouldn't mind having some roaring 20s Gatsby time.
I think we can. We've got to learn the
I think
Charleston again.
we'll-
You know how
yeah,
they do
well,
the Charleston? That was in
have
the
to go back
20s.
and learn.
Yeah.
It'd be,
Well, maybe we'll
it'd be
invent a new
interesting
one.
to see what that technology is, because even one of the greatest challenges for our manufacturers is around the cost of electricity in this country, and that's one of the things that is it does stifle the growth in some of our highly energy intensive manufacturing industries.
Our electricity grid's been pretty slow to move, given the advances in battery tech that you're well across. I mean, how well do you think we are at deploying batteries into the grid?
We could be doing a lot better.
Yeah, right. I mean, I've seen the economics of it. It stacks up. Grid scale deployment of batteries works economically now.
So I wonder, is this a time that we can leverage that? What would it take us to leverage those technologies in order to support the manufacturing sector?
Wanting to do it more.
Yes, deciding to do it. And,
Yeah,
and is this the great reset for us, right? Do we invest at COVID? Do we invest in R&D? Do we invest in these new technologies? Do we take it forward? I mean, that's what everyone's looking for us to do. Like Leanne said, I think governments do need to lead this, but we need to push them, and then we need to lead with them and take public positions, take appointments, make the difference.
Yeah, and doing it in an inclusive way. So there's somewhere for everyone in this, so that all the Bristers who have now lost their job, not due to tech, but due to COVID, but there is a way for them to go forward, that we do look at, whether it is digital reskilling or a different... And a lot of the skills of the new economy aren't the hard technical ones, they're softer skills, which are about marrying to the tech. I think robotics creates the field of human-computer interface, and psychologists, and it's what my team is increasingly interested in, is the human aspect of how a human being interacts with a robot.
So it's interesting that
Yeah.
Arm Hub company, everyone knows they might need a robot, but they don't realise actually predominantly what they need is design capability,
Yeah.
interfaces, human engagement. So the team is actually majoritively made up of designers who are actually providing the interface. They're looking at workflows. They're trying to understand what assistance a human needs and if it will
So
work.
I remember being at a big tech conference in Asia, and they unveiled this robot who was a lady who was a companion robot for not that weird kind of stuff. But this was more like so that an old person who might be your mum wants someone to talk
Yeah.
to.
Oh.
But the back of her head was missing, and
Oh.
it was so freaky. You know, if I, you know,
But
I
it's,
would
it's
think,
like understanding your customer,
but-
understanding customer-centric
right, but-
design and having that empathy that
they'd gotten a little way, but they hadn't
Hadn't
actually
quite got
talked to
there.
a person about, you know, how a companion robot might look.
I
It
love
sounds
this
wrong
companion.
every time I say the word companion robot.
I love
feel
this
like-
conversation though, because we had a lot of, we hear a lot about STEM skills and
Yeah.
technology and the future. And I think it's really interesting to hear you both saying, you know, looking about the psychology of that human machine interface, looking at customer centric ways of analysing design. So what are the skills, as you guys see it, what are the skills of the future that we need?
The hard tech skills really matter, right? I mean, I think computational logic and coding needs to be massively upgraded in our schools, but it can't end there because, you know, the big tech corporations, and we know as well, human-centered design is everything. You build tech that doesn't work with people. The big, massive databases that systems and computerized information systems that have failed have typically failed to put the user really into the space. And that's happened in the health sector a lot. They've built big multi-billion-dollar health information systems globally. This has happened in a lot of cases, but they haven't put clinicians and nurses and people who have to interact with these systems into the center of the design work, and they don't work.
No.
Yeah, and I think the same with the robots that are meant to look after an old person and be a friend and a companion. If you haven't really thought through the human side of that,
Absolutely.
not just given it a surface level brush over, but the human side is, and HITL is a pretty big concept in AI, human in the loop, where we have seen some spectacular AI failures that have been in the news. It's because we haven't integrated the human being in the decision-making process. You know, the news headlines are there's been big ones, which I don't want to go into all the detail of because they've been so bad. But that is typically where the failure has occurred, is not cleverly putting the human being into the decision-making process.
And I'd argue too, we just actually need creatives to be part of these processes.
Yeah.
Like, we are very instrumental in our understanding of technologies and factories and manufacturing, but who's going to build the novel ideas? Who's going to do the left of centre? Who's going to join the innovation and the technical teams?
Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge.
Yeah, go Einstein.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and he wasn't so good at spelling, I hear.
No,
either.
he wasn't. He had issues,
It's a
makes me
diversity of
feel good about the
thought
future
thing
for my
too,
kids.
right? Like we need having the different
Yes.
ways of thinking in the room to be able to
Right.
come to those innovative solutions. You've got a creative background,
Yes.
and you were able to set up the Arm Hub, which is amazingly impressive.
It's really just about bringing different people together, and I think you're absolutely right there. I think actually one of the most, well, the technical side, how we could understand it. If we're building systems that are made by certain people, they're going to have a bias, and this is a widely talked about thing. We need all people to be able to make systems, use systems, improve systems. And Stefan, I'm sure you have a point of view
I
on
get
that.
imposter syndrome, right? Because I'm inside with all these super smart technical people who know about all this stuff, and half the time I've got no idea really how it works or how to make it because it's so advanced and complicated. But then again, you kind of reassure yourself with the interdisciplinary nature of the world that we're in. No one actually knows everyone. Yeah.
I was
No, so
about to
right-
say, we need to just cut that right here for everybody watching too. We all have imposter syndrome. It's just a thing we all have, so don't even think twice about it.
Yeah, it's just increasingly, I feel like I'm totally at a loss. But then again, I think, you know, that's the case. We all have bits of knowledge which you've put together. I think interdisciplinary solutions are going to be pretty central to this concept of human-computer interfaces and human design. There is a
Absolutely.
lot of psychology about how human beings will interact with AI. If we want data-driven organisations where data is used in decision-making, there is a human being with all their sources of bias, but brilliance in decision-making too.
Yeah.
Humans are, you know, hopeless
humans
decision-makers in some ways, but then again, our gut feel and instinct and intuition is incredibly good.
Yeah.
And if we you marry it well to the analytics and the data science, that's good.
We may yet be leaving our
Yeah.
bodies and uploading
Are we
ourselves into
talking enough
computers.
about manufacturing though? Because
I was just going to bring it back in because I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about was about sustainability in
Yeah.
manufacturing in particular. I feel like our factories of the future, they need to accommodate for not just our economic needs, and the economist in you might twitch a little bit, but also
No, I know where you're going. I'm gonna.
but also the social and environmental needs of our people and our society.
Did you have to tell them I was an economist? I was trying to keep, I'm only a
Trying to
little
keep
bit
that
of
one
an
under
I'm
wraps.
mostly human.
And during the COVID response, I think for me it's really highlighted the significant amount of waste associated with products, particularly in our healthcare industry. And reusable personal protective equipment was just not a thing. There wasn't any listed on the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Association. We didn't have access to reusable protection gear, which then meant that it put pressure on our supply chains, which were already incredibly pressured already. And the other side of that is too that we've got this epic amount of waste that needs to be incinerated.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I look at the response, we had so many innovators come up and say, I've got a solution for this. We've got fashion designers making reusable gowns. We've got researchers who have cellular-based mask material that is able to be biodegradable and safe and effective. We've got our chemical textile scientists that can impregnate fabrics with things that kill the virus or other bacteria or fungi. And yet it was difficult to latch onto that innovation during this process because we kind of held on to the status quo of throw away one mask, one task, personal protective equipment. And I'd love to talk a little bit about what part sustainability and circular economy plays in the factories of the future. And it's a shame we've lost Leanne because she is
But I
the
think it
best
would be
circular economy.
Great to hear
advocate.
about what you think the economics of
Yeah.
that is, because
Well-
it's maybe we're failing to be able to make the economic
a good
argument
point.
because it involves social factors, it involves
I think
environmental factors.
Because can we talk about your 7 bins, or is that because I don't want to put you
So
on the
before
spot.
we came online, I said that I'm a crazy person with 7 bins. My makeup's local and it comes in metal. My clothes were made and designed in Brisbane as well, so I'm just a little bit of a nutcase. And I've got bins for everything. So we've got bins for glass, we've got bins for soft plastic, we've got bins for food waste, and everything goes to a place that we know will actually be recycled. Because part of the challenge is that I think you said 10% of products are recycled in this country.
Of plastic, of all the products, I think of recycle, reuse, it's more. It's around 50. This
Okay.
is what I read. I didn't just know this stuff, but after you sent the email, I checked it. But of all the plastic, yeah, roughly 10% of all the plastic that we use is going to get turned into another bit of plastic.
So I take
which is
my
pretty
soft plastic
tragic.
and take it
But
to
I
the
will-
place where they're going to recycle it. So that's
Can
the
you-
story
you
of
can
the
do that
7
with soft
bins.
plastic, and that's really good because I struggle at the bin trying to work out what I can put it in. I'm also aware that you're not doing them a favour when you put the wrong stuff in there, because that actually makes processing incredibly costly, which gets us to the economics of it. And that is, I think, an interesting, we were talking about the importance of the human being in technical design. The human and the economy is really important.
There's
not-
milk tops
you know,
too. Did you
yeah.
know you can put the
You-
milk tops and then
yeah,
you take them and
take
they can
them off.
3D print hands with them. So
And you should unscrew the milk
Yes.
top from the rest of the bottle and put it in.
we've got a
Seems we need
recycling
more
lesson
education.
here.
Education and human, but it's internalizing the externalities is what economists
Yeah.
call it. So that is jargon for putting the full cost of the product you buy into the product, either as a benefit to make it cheaper or not. So if you buy a piece of plastic that is going to end up in the ocean, you end up paying for the whole cost of what it does in the ocean, to tourism, to fisheries, to aesthetics, to all of the end of life impacts and the cleaning up. You're actually bringing that into the cost of the item. But if it's a clever product that has had a lot of innovative design, of which 90% is going to be recycled, then that is a cheaper product, that is a better product, and there's a really strong market incentive to go in that direction and buy that product, because
that's
prices,
definitely
price
something
signals
we-
make a difference.
Yep, absolutely, and that's
Yeah.
something we struggle with in manufacturing here in Australia when it's a procurement piece too. It's a policy piece and it's also a procurement piece because people aren't looking at the whole of life cost.
Yeah.
So if I buy a reusable PPE gown for $20 and you can wear it indefinitely,
Yeah.
and you add some tech into that that can monitor how many times it's been worn, then that costs over the cost of life of the product, it's a lot less. But if we look at the procurement cost of a
Yeah.
disposable at $3, it's difficult for people to make that
Bringing
decision.
the whole cost of life into the product is part of the solution, so that the better environmentally performing products have a strong price signal. And when you're reaching in the supermarket shelf for product A or B, and one is going to have a much higher chance of recycling, it also costs you less.
How do
Enough
we
to-
do that in practical reality? How do we achieve that? Because the reason I ask is it
It's a
really
good
supports
question.
manufacturing.
Yeah.
Because if
It
we
does.
consider that, because when we're doing
Well-
innovative design, when we're utilising reused polymers in our design, and if there is some weighting associated with it, it drives innovation and it drives manufacturing.
Clever government policy can achieve it. I mean, government plays a critical role in this stuff. There's no way we can sort of leave government out of the picture. It can really influence how the economy works and how the market, let the market do what it does really well, but guide it. Markets are good servants, but bad masters. If we attract the market to go to the thing, it's amazing how much change we can create in a positive direction. So I think pricing signals are part of it. The other thing is a human thing, in that, you know, we've recently put a house on the market. We're selling it during COVID. We'll see how we go fairly soon. But as part of that process, we've had to clear everything out. And we went to the charity shops to do the drop-off. They didn't take a lot of it because they're overwhelmed with stuff, even during the crisis. They still would, if a little scrape or something on a table, which looked great to me, 2 charities wouldn't take because they couldn't feel like they could sell it easy enough. And we've got another 10
Yeah.
out here that are in good. So we had to put it all into the tip, and we just watched it go into landfill because we didn't have anywhere else. Nobody wanted it. We couldn't find it. Time was ticking on the clock. And you just watch the landfill clear several times a day, and all these other trucks, massive, you know, absolutely incredible. And it's important, I think, for people to go and do that, to stand and watch a tip for a while, to realise
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, and
It's
how massive it is.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of good indicators,
Yeah.
perhaps like your feelings and experiences at that time.
Yeah.
Certainly every day on the floor in the Arm Hub, companies are coming to us. They have great structures for their business and beliefs in their business around the circular economy, and are looking always for those innovative ways to do it. Sometimes their whole business model is based on that. And also from the educational point of view, when we're working with a lot of experts that come from the research institutions and students who've recently been through higher education of some kind, who have that as a baseline expectation, that these are the considerations that have gone into place, otherwise I don't want to be involved. So there is certainly a groundswell of personal drivers. It's just, how does that get
Wouldn't it be
actualised?
nice when you bought a milk carton, it said, and you could believe this too, 70% of this product is going to be recycled, 70% of what you've bought. So I think also a big part of the solution then about market and pricing signals. Another thing where markets don't work well is information failure. If we can give buyers of products good information, easy to understand information, like this is being done with the healthiness of food. We have a star rating system
Yep.
now, because we know people can't handle all the complex information at the back. And I think with recycling too, a big failing is the complexity of what you can recycle and what you can't. You know, there's all the different symbols and different layers. Most people don't come close to knowing your 7-bin system, but they don't have the knowledge. You know, most of them are lucky to go recycle or not recycle is a pretty, but simplification of that helps hugely. And smart bins. You
Yep.
scan the product before you drop it in and it goes into the right bin. We should all probably have 7 bins that are well thought through, which make this feasible. This
But
is
you're right,
this is
technology
doable.
could do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. What I reckon computer vision and machine learning could do. We can do anything on computer vision almost. We just built something that classifies snakes. Of a picture of the snake, it works out what snake. You can show a computer a picture of anything. So you could show it a picture of something, is it recyclable or not,
Yeah.
and it would tell you
It would tell
which
you.
bin to put it in.
Certainly there's a packaging revolution that's got to be coming in a massive wave now, you would think. The kind of things we actually are almost cornered to purchasing is not making a good income. Like when you have to go to the fruit and veggie store and you have to use 3 or 4 different plastic bags for no good reason.
And food packaging unlocks global agricultural supply chains to benefit Australia's agricultural sector and food sector too, because we said that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I think that innovation, often we forget that innovation, like some technology, let's say sustainable packaging technology, can unlock our food and agricultural businesses to be able to export to the world, which then feeds into our manufacturing. So you've got this whole, I think it's sometimes misunderstood about the connection between innovation, design and manufacturing and how those all feed into each other.
A recent analysis finds that some agricultural sectors, up to 48% of farm gate cost is freight, logistics and getting it to market. So that's a huge part of the cost of growing the thing and producing it, of the food item. And I understand that a lot of air freight is just not financially viable to get our products to the restaurants, the markets in Hong Kong, or direct to customer in Hong Kong, or Chinese cities, Vietnamese cities. There's wealth creation in Asia is creating these massive markets, and it's going to grow. The food demand, you know, is coming back in a big way post-COVID, and fresh and quality food. We need innovative technologies in our manufacturing sectors to put it in a packet that lets it last the distance.
And you're not shipping air.
Yeah, well, that's right. So it can go in a ship, or another solution that lets our product find its way off. That's probably one of the biggest things to solve for massively expanding our agricultural sector, is cracking the food packaging problem to get it over there. And while we'll do it, we'll make it environmentally friendly and recyclable.
I love
we
that.
can do it all.
And it's kind of it's an interesting theme around manufacturing and value adding, because that's kind of similar to our rare earths, isn't it? We're looking at, let's value add to our food, let's inject innovation, let's inject sustainability and export that know-how in the same way that we could do for rare earths. And all of this contributes to a better manufacturing economy for us. Do you guys have any thoughts on value adding and whether that is one of the things that we could pick a winner?
Well, I definitely think we need to know how we're going to do the value adding, and you're absolutely right. I think that's obviously where we start to pick winners. What we already have a natural advantage in, and ag and mining and medtech are those areas. I think it really comes down to me the question about R&D. When we know we have good R&D capability in this nation, and on a lot of indices we're I think 11th in R&D capability in the world, but yet when we come to commercialise it, we're 31st. Like, we are right down there, and we're not even going to talk about economic complexity, because I fear to do that with Stefan here, who would nail it. But we export our raw materials, and we export our talent. We're not doing the value add that we can be doing and we need to be doing. And this is, you know, a crisis really. And at this time, during COVID, where other nations are taking an innovation and a tech investment pathway out of the crisis, Australia's not moving. Our companies are not investing in R&D. Our governments are not increasing their investment in R&D capability, and this is something that we really need to look at.
Because I'm an interesting person, I was recently reading the Product Concentration Index produced by the World Trade Organization
I knew
report.
You'd be perfect.
And it was really interesting. But it does show us something interesting for Australia as a standout in the world, in that we are highly benefiting of exports, but highly exposed to exports. 22% of our GDP comes from exports. Foreign direct investment plays a significant role, but what is also happening over the last 20 years, apart from the share of GDP growing, what is also happening is our product concentration index is going up by the WTO as well, which means that we are getting more and more money off fewer and fewer products.
Yes.
Iron ore, thermal and metallurgical coal play a big role, beef exports. So this can be good. I mean, I don't go out and say that the diversification is intrinsically a good thing to do. You can do very well off having comparative advantage, economies of scale and specialisation. Do what you do really well. Swiss watchmakers make a lot of Swiss, let them do it really well.
But there's risk though, right?
Yeah, right. And that's where we're coming into now is risk. And if we look at some of the Rust Belt towns of the United States where, say, the coal industry has collapsed, it's devastating. It's really terrible when one big industry disappears. And I do think that is relevant for Queensland. And it is a serious reason why there's an innovation imperative and a need to diversify and build tertiary industries. To do it intelligently, you know, I don't think we want to just jump in and start making electric vehicles. The electric vehicle market will be huge. Indonesia is putting its flag up to say it wants to do it. I think there are opportunities for us to sell parts of those electric vehicles to Indonesia, to sell technologies which may include computer vision systems and AI for autonomous features of those cars, or semi-autonomous features of cars. And it may make sense for us to be selling a wide range, like lithium, cobalt and all the other elements on the periodic table that I can't remember that you know.
It's Vanadium.
That one. Yeah. My son knows a periodic table. He's trying to teach me. It's not working at all. But there's a chance we can sell a lot of that stuff because, again, part of the geopolitical shifts occurring post-COVID, supply chain resilience is the thing, and rare earths, critical minerals, are a big growth opportunity for Australia. Actually, the next phase of our mining boom, I think, translates into rare earths. Yeah.
So can we add value to them other than just exporting them as a rare earth? I mean, what
We
are the
can, but I think
opportunities?
I'd say adding value sounds like the right thing to do, and I know the arguments a lot often put to us that we shouldn't just sell the iron ore and buy the steel back. And I used to have disputes about this with my cousin who worked in the UK in the steel sector, and I used to say we should turn it into steel and sell you the steel, and he said no, dig up the iron ore, do it really well, and sell it to us and others. You're going to do that with heaps of efficiency and get good at doing it. There is a really strong and logical argument in that, but it's a diversification question, and it is building off logically what you do. Our METS sector, you know, the exports of METS products, you know, it's not where minerals exports is yet, but it has just exploded with huge benefit. And I think agri-tech follows suite, and I think that within the manufacturing sector we can point to other spaces.
So in a way, METS provides our kind of smart specialisation in the mining and
Correct.
technology
We're selling
sector broadly.
know-how.
Yeah.
Just as Pittsburgh stopped selling steel and started selling steel know-how and metallurgical science, Australia can start to sell into these. And the other thing is, you know, as the Asian economies such as China, the services sector has gotten bigger than the manufacturing sector. As they become advanced service sector economies like ours, we've got to take this jump to the advanced service sector that sells a whole lot of stuff into this sector that is different.
But in order to do that, we need to be investing in that innovation piece and
We do.
investing in R&D.
We do.
And I'll just ask one more question before we wrap it up. But are we doing enough here in investing in our R&D for a post-COVID world and to leverage the opportunities that are there?
What is the great opportunity, the big reset? At the moment, no. And we are looking to institutions and governments, and I just don't know if we're going to get the response we need.
I think we can have the roaring 2020s, the same as the roaring 1920s.
No,
we'll come up
bring
with
it on.
another version of the Charleston. It is absolutely feasible. If you were in the world in 1919, you would be feeling devastation, hopelessness. You know, you'd been through the worst pandemic in the history of the world. 50 million people passed away, they think. They don't really know for sure. Then you have this depression. You'd be thinking it was pretty much all pointless. But it shoots up, and it was technology, innovation, especially in the manufacturing sector, that led to that growth. That is eminently feasible with the general purpose technologies such as artificial intelligence. If we grab it and go in that direction, we can make it work. Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. We should look for that rhyme.
So manufacturing and innovation in the manufacturing sector, that is music to my ears. Thank you so much to our panel members for bringing so much knowledge and excitement to tonight's discussion. I'm sorry that we lost Leanne halfway through because she always has such brilliant stuff to say around these topics. And thanks to everyone for joining us online tonight. If you missed any of the conversation, a link will be shared shortly to view at your leisure during the week. I'll leave you with this. Australia is teeming with the intellect and initiative needed to design and manufacture high-quality products. But we must look towards the future, leverage our ecosystem, leverage our innovation, and work together to design our factories of the future. The state of manufacturing has changed, and we need to change with it. Thank you, and good night.